Hello, I'm Cybex author and Stormwind instructor, William Panic. In this video, we're going to discuss GPOs, Group Policy Objects. I got an email from someone that asked me, hey, can you talk a little bit about GPOs and how GPOs process and how they take effect, for example, if you have multiple GPOs set? And can you give us a little bit of help of what GPOs are actually doing for us? So I decided I'd put together a little video that I can stick out so that people can actually see a little bit about GPOs and how they work. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and let's talk about understanding group policy objects. Now, what exactly is a group policy object? A group policy object is a policy or rule that you place on either a user or a computer setting. Now, these policies can range from setting everybody's wallpaper up to deploying or restricting certain software packages from running. Now, when you set up GPOs, there are 4 ways that you can actually set up policies. You can set up local policies, which means that I go to a local machine and I actually set up a policy on that local machine. This is very rarely done in the corporate environment unless there's a very specific reason you're going to one individual machine to set up a policy. It is sometimes done. For example, let's say that you have Windows 10 installed onto your company's network. And you have one individual that keeps going out to the Microsoft Store and they keep purchasing all kinds of free applications that they're downloading onto their system. The applications haven't been tested with the IT department and they haven't been approved. You can actually go to just that one machine and set a local policy up on that one machine where that user, that machine, can't open the Microsoft Store. So that might be a reason, for example, why you would set up a local policy on someone's system. But normally in the corporate world, we set our policies up on either sites, domains, or OUs. Now, what are each one of these? Let's start with a domain. A domain is a logical grouping of objects. And that's the key word there, logical. For example, www.microsoft.com or just Microsoft's network, their domain, the Microsoft domain. That is a worldwide company. They have a worldwide domain. But it's Microsoft.com or .net or whatever they happen to use internally for their domain. Because domains are actual logical. They can span across the entire world. Stormwinds, the company I train for, we have offices all over the United States. Stormwinds.com is not located in one area. So that's why domains are logical and not physical, because they can span well beyond one location. Sites are the physical part of Active Directory. You build sites in Active Directory based on TCP/IP subnets. Depending on which subnet you log on to, depends on which site you may belong to. And organizational units, these are just storage containers within Active Directory. For example, I can have an organizational unit called New Hampshire. And inside that organizational unit, all of my New Hampshire employees reside. I can have an OU called Arizona, and in the Arizona organizational unit, all of our Arizona employees reside. Now, the reason why a lot of us set up multiple OUs is because it makes it easier for us to control and manipulate Active Directory. Because one of the advantages is that each OU can have its own GPO. So, let's say I have a sales OU and an IT OU. The sales OU can have different rules and different policies than the IT OU. So this is the reason why you like to use organizational units within Active Directory. Because if you structure Active Directory either based on geographic location, based on department that they work for, you can set different rules based on that. So, now the real question is, what happens when you have multiple GPOs affecting multiple areas? For example, let's say that I have a GPO set on this child and this parent organizational unit. So on the parent OU, we're going to actually set it up so that on the parent OU, anybody who logs in is going to get the red corporate wallpaper. But on the child OU, everybody who logs in is going to get the green corporate wallpaper. Now, what happens if I am a member of both organizational units? All right. Now, by default, a parent's OU, this GPO is going to filter down to the child. But here's what happens. When two GPOs conflict with each other, the child GPO wins by default. So whenever you have two GPOs, okay, two GPOs that conflict with each other, the child GPO always wins. Now that's the default setting. So if I belong to both of these organizational units, then when I log on, I'm going to have green wallpaper. Let's say that on this particular OU we don't have nothing set, but on the site I have it set up where we're going to use the blue corporate wallpaper. If I am part of this child OU and I'm also part of the New Hampshire site, again, because site is higher than an OU, the child is going to win. I'm still going to log on and get green wallpaper. Now, just like any parent-child relationship, it does not have to work this way. You can have the ability as a parent, just like you do in a real world, to enforce a policy. So, let's say that on this parent OU, I set it up so that everybody has to have red wallpaper. And on the child, everybody set up to be green. But on the parent GPO, I'm going to set what they call the enforce. If I set the enforce, then no matter what the child does, it doesn't matter. When I log on, because the enforce is set on this GPO, when I log on to this child organization, my actual wallpaper is going to be red. Because the enforce is going to override that other GPO. Even if the child, there's a thing you can do called block parent inheritance. Even if I block the parent inheritance, it does not matter. The enforce overrides the block. Once I actually set enforce to a GPO, any GPOs under that GPO, any child that are under that GPO, are automatically going to be overridden. So the enforce will always win. So when you set up your corporate hierarchy, because again, normally you either just set up on your sites, domains, or OUs, by default, the child OU, or I'm sorry, not the child OU, but the child GPO is always going to take precedence over the parent GPO. But again, if the parent sets the enforce, then the parent GPO will win. Now, another thing that you have to actually look at is the actual precedence order. Now, let's take a look at this screenshot. I have two GPOs here. I have the default domain policy, and I also have a sales policy. If you notice, the sales policy is set with a precedence of 1, and the domain policy a precedence of 2. Well, precedence values work the same as cost values. So if you're familiar with cost values in Microsoft, for example, I can set up a cost value on a site link of 10 on one site link and 20 on another site link. And whenever I need to have one site communicate to another, it's always going to use the lowest cost value. Well, it works the exact same way when it comes to your precedence. If I have these two policies set up, the default domain policy is going to run first. Then the actual sales policy is going to run next, and the sales policy will override any of the other settings because it has a higher precedence number. So if there is any conflicts between these two GPOs, the sales is going to win. Now, again, if in my default domain policy I set the enforce, and then there's any conflicts, the enforce domain policy would win. But without doing that, in this particular example, the sales settings are going to have a higher value by having a lower precedence number. So again, think of it like a cost value. The lower the cost value, the higher the value it's going to be run. So here, precedence 1 has a higher value than precedence 2. So the default domain policy will run first, then the sales policy will run after that. Now, we talked about the enforce setting and we talked about the block policy inheritance. On a child, you can block the parent policy inheritance at any time. The only time that gets overridden, again, is if the enforce setting is set. Now, real quick, let's talk about the loopback processing option. This is a little different, and this might be a little bit something that you've never ever used or even heard of, but it's something very important to know because it can be very valuable to you in your organization. Let's say, for example, that I have a break room where I have a kiosk system, meaning a system that anybody can use. It's a machine that anybody while at lunchtime in the break room can sit down, go out on the internet, do whatever, some things here and there. Just a basic kiosk system. We see them a lot in hotels. We see them a lot in libraries. So it's a machine that anybody's allowed to use. Well, let's say, for example, that I, Will.Panic, that's my account, Will.Panic here, has a GPO set where I'm going to actually deploy Office to the Will.Panic GPO. I belong to a site that is going to have Office deployed. Well, when I sit down at that kiosk machine, I don't want my settings, my personal settings of Office to be deployed to that kiosk machine. Because every single person in the company, if they have different GPO settings, every time they sit down at the kiosk machine, the kiosk is constantly going to be changing. So what you can do is you can set what they call the loopback setting. And the loopback setting has two options, merge or replace. Basically what happens is this. It means that the computer settings of that kiosk are going to override any of my user settings. Now, if the merge is set, what's going to happen is if I have any computer settings set to a GPO that I belong to, as long as they don't conflict, they will actually be added, they'll be merged in with the computer settings set for the kiosk. So for example, it may even lock me down even further on that kiosk. Or on the actual kiosk system, on the loopback processing, I can just set it to replace. And what replace will do is replace will actually just, it doesn't care what my settings are. It's just going to replace whatever I have with the kiosk settings. So loopback processing is something that you want to think about using if you are in an environment where you have a kiosk type system and you don't want users' GPOs to affect that kiosk system. Now, real quick, let's go ahead and let's take a look at a Windows Server 2012 system. Here I have my Group Policy Management console, my MMC. So I'm going to double click on that, and here I have my New Hampshire OU. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a GPO here. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say create a GPO in this domain and link it here. I'm going to link it right to this OU. And I'm going to call it Lockdown. All right, I already had one called Lockdown. So let's just say Lockdown. I'll call it Lockdown 2. Didn't realize I already had a lockdown policy set, but we'll call one Lockdown 2. Now, when I click on this policy and right click, you can see here that here's the enforce. If I just check that, say yes, you'll now see that this is enforced. It's as simple as that to enforce a policy. So if I no longer want to enforce it, I just uncheck the box. Now, if I want to edit that policy, I click Edit. And at this point, when I click Edit, I can go in and I can actually now manipulate this GPO. So I'm going to go to the user's policies. I'm going to go to the administrative templates, for example, and I'm going to go to the desktop. And because I'm locking things down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide and disable all the items on the desktop. So basically, I'm going to take away all of their desktop items. So when I double click on this, you notice a couple things. I have not configured, enforced, or disabled. If I enabled or disabled, if I enable it, this policy will now be enabled. So I click Enable, I say OK, and now that policy is enabled. When the user logs on, all of their stuff is going to be taken off of the desktop. I can hide the Internet Explorer on the desktop. So I'll click on that. I'll click Enabled. I'm going to say OK. And now the actual Internet Explorer is also hidden on the desktop. I can remove the network locations. I can remove my documents. I can remove the computer icon. I can actually remove the recycle bin. I can set it so that you don't save settings when the user exits. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. That's just on the desktop. And then there's even more settings. I can go into the control panel and configure stuff in the control panel. I can control how the network connections are going to work. The start menu. So there are literally hundreds of settings, and there are even settings here that you can add in. For example, I was on a location one time, a long time ago, where I had an actual user ask me, he said, listen, I have multiple people using multiple copies of Office. At the time, it was Office 2003, Office 2007, Office 2010. He said, the problem is when people save stuff in 2010, the people using Office 2003 can't open the new format. Is there a way that I can force everybody to save it as the same document type? So this way, no matter which version of Office you're using, you're saving it along the same way. And there was. We went out to Microsoft's website. We grabbed the actual Office settings for the GPOs, imported the Office settings, and one of them was default save type. We set it to doc, and at that point, we set that on the domain, everybody, when they saved documents in Word, saved them as docs, and they can be opened in any version. So, there are group policies out there that you can import that aren't even part of the actual common ones that you get through the actual group policy management console. So if there's something very specific you're looking to do, before you go out of your way and try to build something or figure out something, check Microsoft, check the internet, and see if someone's already built a GPO that will help you do what you need to do. Now, if you need any additional training or resources, you can always feel free to contact us at www.stormwind.com. They are an online training company. That's the company that I train for. You can always watch my videos at www.youtube.com/c/William Panic. And many of these videos are also videos that are included in my books. So if you actually have one of my books and you're reading one of my books, if there's exercises in the book that actually has a little icon for a video, you can go out to the YouTube website and also check those videos on the YouTube website. Or if you need more additional information, you can always find me at www.willpanic.com. Now, if you are out on the YouTube website and there is a subject that you are trying to learn more about, please feel free to go ahead and shoot me a message, and I will try to build a quick video to help you understand one of the topics that you're a little confused or something that you don't understand about. I really appreciate you taking the time, a few minutes out of your day, to spend watching this video. And again, if you would like additional help or you're trying to pass Microsoft exams, feel free to always get in touch with us at www.stormwind.com, and we can help you with some online training. I am Cybex author and Stormwind instructor, William Panic. Thank you very much for watching this video on GPOs, and I look forward to seeing you in one of my classes real soon.